Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us on another edition of Jake's Takes. Try and tackle everything in the world of sports, football, basketball, baseball. And today, specifically, I want to talk about Auburn point guard Sharife Cooper and why I think he's going to return to Auburn and why he needs to return to Auburn. I do want to say this is his decision. It's not my decision. It's not the fans' decision. And he's going to decide what he's going to decide. But I got a good feeling that he's going to return to Auburn, and this is why. When you look at the projected draft right now, and again, it's going to fluctuate. It always moves. I would put it anywhere into the first round, 23 range and up. You look at what he would measure at. His height is not plus in the NBA. Not a ton you can do about that. It's not like you can drink a couple cups of Miracle Grow and get taller. Let me put out a disclaimer that does not work, so don't try that at home. But when you look at his game, number one, his potential is through the roof. We know how high his ceiling is. We've seen the passes, the way he can operate, even having to sit out half of the season and going into a Division I SEC schedule, starting off with a team like Alabama, where he took an Auburn team that struggled on offense, and they're dropping 90 points and 94 points. And there were some struggles, and that's what happens when you go up a league. And he didn't have a ton of time to feel it out, so we can see the talents there. But there's a few things he has to improve on. Number one, he's got to have more than the step-back three, and he didn't shoot the three very well. Not a great percentage. And in the NBA, you look at guys that are elite. Passers, I'll start with that. Kyrie Irving, Chris Paul, guys that aren't the tallest, okay, but they're able to operate and have success because they're a threat from three. You have to cover them. They've got more than a step back, and they're able to manipulate their shot angles and still make shots. That's something that Shareef has not shown the capability. Notice I didn't say the word ability, because he has the ability to make a ton of shots. But from the perimeter, you have to be a threat in the NBA, or they're going to be able, just like in the NFL, if you're a guy that's a statue back there and you're not as smart as Tom Brady and you don't understand the check down and all these things and you're not a veteran and have gone through it, they're able to pigeonhole you and make you one-dimensional. And in the NBA, that doesn't work. That is a recipe for the G League. And if you're a guy of Sharife Cooper's ability that has that potential, you should not have to go through the G League. And it takes me back to Jared Harper had an incredible year his last year at Auburn. One of the best, if not the best point guard in the NCAA. You look at his height, he's still fighting his way through the G League right now. But if you're Sharife Cooper, the three-point shot, number one, he has to speed up that shot. There's a reason it's always a step back, or he is just going off pure feel if a guy is playing off of him. And if you watched a little bit as the season went on, guards started to back up off of him a little bit, because what was his dagger? It's the drive and the and one, or it's the drive and the kick to an open guy shooting a three, a la JT Thor against Kentucky, coming back even though he was wide open at the end and Shareef didn't find him. So that's one area he's got to improve on. The second is strength and conditioning. I'm not saying he's weak. I'm not saying he's slow. But to be that size, he's got to get stronger to be able to finish at the rim with more authority, regardless if it's a guard chasing him down, or they switch to a small forward or a power forward, or he runs into a center. He's got to be able to take that contact more, because he does a great job of finding contact. Sharife Cooper is not scared. The difference between Sharife Cooper and B.J. Boston, and I don't think B.J.'s scared, B.J. doesn't understand how to play physical. Sharife wants to play physical, but his body does not match his mindset yet. And it's only going to get harder in the NBA, because your ability to not only drive and finish at the rim, because if I can drive and finish at the rim, I can suck defenders in, kick it out, even in the NBA, to guys who just need a little bit of daylight to shoot the three and make it. So you look at the three-pointer that I just talked about. You look at his ability to drive and finish through contact and make those tough shots at the rim on a more consistent basis. Opens up not only himself, but everybody else on the team. Another thing, Sharife Cooper needs more tape. And he needs tape in critical moments. And that's how his draft stock is going to rise. I think if he comes back, which I think there's a good chance he will be a lottery pick in next year's draft. Because you can't just look at yourself. You have to look at what's around you. And when you look at Sharife Cooper, if you're able to come back, and if he does, with JT Thor returning, with Alan Flanagan returning, with Dylan Cardwell returning, with Jalen Williams returning. I'm not going to count Devin Cambridge right now, because he hasn't shown enough in his ability to be consistent and be a threat. He struggles defensively. Then you add Jabari Smith and Trey Alexander. That's a preseason top 10 team and probably a top 5 roster. So what does that mean? All the hype going into the year, will be gassing Sharife Cooper up. He will already have moved himself up into the lottery pick range because next year's draft's going to be strong, but it's not nearly as strong as this year's draft. He'll move himself up. He'll be thrust into the spotlight even more, probably preseason SEC Player of the Year, even though I think it's a good chance it's going to be Jabari Smith Jr., and that's who the offense is really going to run through. But he'll already be in the national spotlight even more. You return with guys like I mentioned, JT Thor, who next year is going to be an absolute problem. You add Jabari, you add this roster around, and it makes teams not be able to key on you. Because this year they were able to key on Shareef. What did Eric Musselman say? If you stop Shareef, you stop the team. And at the end of the day, that's going to have better numbers for you around when you're looking at assists. His defense has to improve, especially when you're that height. Being able to guard guys on the ball that are bigger than you, he's got to generate more steals. Assists and vision is not the problem. He can always improve there. He's got an unbelievable handle. Walking and dribbling and running and dribbling is just like walking and dribbling to us when you look at what he's able to do. But from a defensive standpoint, from a three-point shooting standpoint, from a finishing at the rim, and that comes with strength and conditioning, getting bigger, getting stronger, which will do nothing but move him up in the eyes of scouts, are huge things. But the biggest thing, he needs to play in the tournament. That is where... Look at what Cade Cunningham, we all know that Cade Cunningham is a freak of nature. He's unbelievable. But his stock has risen even more. Even more. And it's not just, oh, he may be the number one pick. How much money is he going to get? How valuable is he to be able to say, listen, we want to throw the bag at this guy. We want to lock him up for a long time because Cade Cunningham, like I always say, is a witch of the highest order. But what he did in the Big 12 tournament on the run that Oklahoma State went on, what he can possibly do in the NCAA tournament. And that's why you go to college. That's why you play college basketball, to play in March. The regular season's great. The Big 12 SEC Challenge is great, but you will forever be judged in March. Now, you look at a guy like Isaac Okoro last year. You were the 6th overall pick. You have to go. The tournament was canceled because of COVID. That is an anomaly. That is a certain circumstance. And think about it. Sharife Cooper's buddies with all these guys. He went to McEachern. They played together. They play on AOT, the AAU teams. All these guys do. They look at BJ Boston, as I mentioned earlier. You come to college to play in the tournament. And Shareef, my question to you is, do you want your legacy at Auburn to be an average record and an average season with no tournament? Or do you want people to look back and say, man, that 2021-2022 Auburn team was the best, one of the best we've ever had. The predecessors went to the Final Four. The predecessors were 25-9, getting hot in the SEC tournament, going to make a run in the NCAA tournament. Do you want to be a part of the group that didn't do it? Not because of COVID, not just because you weren't eligible, but look at the record. Legacy counts. Legacy matters, especially to someone as competitive as Sharife Cooper. And you want to be able to look back 20 years down the road, 30 years down the road, and tell your kids and their grandkids, look what daddy and granddaddy did in the NCAA tournament when we went on that run, because that is what you are judged on. That is what you will be remembered by. 100 years from now, they will never remember what happened during the regular season in Auburn's Final Four run, but they will look at that banner and they will say, that's the team that went to the Final Four. Is that what you want? It's his decision. Whatever he does, his family is unbelievably well positioned. His dad is an agent doing all this stuff. But deep down, there's a competitive spot in all of us, especially the elite guys. And you look at the work ethic of these guys and a guy like Sharife Cooper, you will be judged on the tournament. Give yourself a chance to play in that tournament because it's the greatest sporting event in the history of the world, in my opinion, when it comes down to the postseason. And again, it's Jake's Takes. It's my opinion. I think Sharife Cooper's coming back. But again, we'll see. I appreciate you guys joining us. Got more great stuff on the way. Make sure you hit up the merch at thejboyshow.com. Great stuff. We're going to add to it as well. It's the only way for you to win the water cooler. All right, I'm out.